Three, two, one, let's go! Yes, Bruce.
Happy hour. First full day of SEG. We are
Monday
live.
night. Ladies and gentlemen, we are sitting down with Bruce Karr from Fairfield.
Thank you,
Fairfield is the... Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What do you think of the booth, first off?
This is a cool setup, man.
Huh?
I like this. This is interesting.
It is, man. It's a little bit different of a take.
Switching it up, man.
Switching it up.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with the PBE podcast?
I am. I've learned about them recently, and I've watched several of them, and it's fun.
It's been an unbelievable education for us to do that show, and it's the Permian Basin Experience podcast. You can catch it on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. And why I bring that up, because we sat down with Steve Jumper. Dawson,
I watched it closely.
CEO of Dawson Geophysical was on the show just recently, who is they're the acquisition company for this seismic shoot that we're looking at.
Absolutely.
The highest fold to ever be seen in the San Andreas and Grayburg and the Woodford and Barnett. This is the biggest, craziest, most advanced seismic shoot in the Permian Basin.
Real data.
This is real data, which you're going to get into. You're
Yes,
going to get
I am.
into the point that it is real data. The other thing we did is we sat down with Stoney Pollock.
The one and only. Arguably the best geologist in the Midland Basin.
Right. And he's Fasken. Fasken is going to be an end user of this. Now, not only Fasken, anybody who wants to be involved in this massive shoot that you guys are doing, they could buy it, and they could also see the highest fold that's ever been seen in the subsurface of the Permian Basin.
Its key is its location. Location. It actually shows you the geology as it comes off of the Central Basin platform. It comes down the shelf, and it goes out into the basin.
Oh, yeah.
It is all of the changes that are happening in the system.
I love it. Because, I mean, there have been these huge question marks that, you know, guys like Charlie Cairns have been tackling over the last 10 years, right, in the Grayburg and the San Andreas, trying to make these correlations back to the Guads, but they just lack the visualization of it, right? They got core, but, you know, these big picture, you know, sequence stratigraphic things that they're trying to put together, it's not possible because they need the data.
Correct. Yeah.
And Fairfield is going to process this.
We are. We've put together a multi-client shoot to go around the Fasken ranch shoot. Fasken will own their data inside the ranch, but we'll broker it for those guys. And it'll be a chance for anybody that wants to get their hands on an amazing set of data.
Oh,
Without question. That's an understatement. This has never been before seen. This is very, very exciting. I know Stoney was clearly just, he was crazy excited
Stoney
about it.
was juiced about it, man. He was.
Jumper was excited about it. I mean, we have both sides of the spectrum, the end user and the guys who are shaking with the tools on the ground and the surface, putting these images together, collecting all the data for you guys to process. And now this is the show that's kind of bringing it all together.
Yep.
Bringing it all together right here live at Icon Live. And I know you have a presentation, but and you might go with this in the presentation. Or let's go with this first. How did Bruce Karr become Bruce Karr at Fairfield? What did you do? Where did you get your education done? What exactly do you do for Fairfield?
Okay, so I'm a Colorado School of Mines graduate.
Okay.
And I got out of school in '88, and I had this wild idea that I wanted to travel the world. So I was looking for an international job. So I also had this idea that I would spend 2 years doing seismic acquisition, 2 years doing processing, and then I'll go make the big money, you know, picking the wells, right? So I had this really ideological idea.
Legit.
So I got a job in the Middle East.
Okay.
Right out of college on an acquisition crew. And I started in the field, and I was actually a doodle bugger. I mean, I was building stuff. I was blowing stuff up. It was fun. It was a riot. A couple of years out of college, I was loving life, traveling the world and playing hard. It was fun. So then after 2 years, I said, okay, I got to go process for 2 years. And so I got a job, and I transferred to Midland, Texas.
No kidding. Went around the world.
All roads lead to Midland.
All roads lead to Midland.
Hey.
So I did 5 years down in Midland, but I got a processing job down there. Worked for Halliburton Geophysical Services at the time.
Cool.
And then after about 5 years, Halliburton decided to get rid of their geophysics work, and so I looked for a job back in Denver, which is where my wife and I were from, and I joined what became Fairfield at that time. So I had fresh field experience, both out of the field and then fresh right out of the West Texas. I learned and grew up processing seismic data out there.
Wow. And then from that point to here is how many years?
So then I went on and I processed for basically about 28 years.
Wow.
Or 26 years. I screwed up that whole part of going and making the big bucks, interpreting and making the X on the map.
Picking wells.
But what really fascinated me is my 2 years in the field in the Middle East as a doodlebugger, I have lived on for 30 years. That knowledge, that information, that boots in the field is key.
Wow. Just ended that last show saying that exact same thing. So, fantastic.
Yeah, what a way to start this off.
Right?
I mean.
So let's look at that image and just real quick, and you might go into this presentation.
Right. Well, I'll show a few things on this particular here. So what you're looking at here is you're actually looking at the Fasken Oil and Ranch, and you're looking up here at the San Andreas, which is right up in here. But above this event here, there's another 4,000 feet of rock.
Right.
Yeah.
Goes all the way up to the Yates. You've got the Queen, you've got the Yates,
all that.
There's all sorts of stuff up there.
Right.
And historically, we just didn't do a very good job of collecting stuff from the San Andreas shallower.
Okay.
So there's that there, and then down below there, you've got the San Andreas, and then you go into the Sprayberry section, which is kind of a funky section, and then you've got this huge zone here, which is your thickening of the Wolfcamp section.
Yeah, I got it.
So then you get down below there, and you get into the Woodford, and you get into the Barnett, which is the new hot play out here. That's the
there are a lot of crazy wells drilled just west of here in the Barnett. Elevation they've proven it. I mean, they're getting good results.
You're going to see some on this data set that have already been drilled.
We got a sneak peek.
There's some good stuff happening on this stuff already.
Yeah.
So, which is one of the driving forces on why people are interested.
Justifies why someone is spending the money they are. Why Dawson is involved in something so intense. Why Fasken's so excited. Why processing is so important. You guys are being driven by the results that we are having recently in this new target. Not only can we increase on Wolfcamp and Sprayberry and above the San Andreas and in every way, but we also have new results that say, let's streamline this thing. We've made it work, and we can barely see it in the data we have. Let's get that data done, and let's take it to the next step.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, So if I show you here, so over here on the right, this is the Fasken chute, and you can see the red's good, by the way. Red's good. Red's new. Red's the next level of what we're doing. Yellow is a historical piece of data that we've been doing out here up until last year. And so my presentation, I'm not going to give the whole presentation, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the history, because I think history gets lost, and if we don't know what we did or what we didn't do, we can't figure out how to fix what we're doing going forward here. So I've got a slide here, I think. This one here. I'll just this here kind of really states the history of 3D seismic in the Permian.
Okay.
So back in the early 1990s to 2000 time frame, we had a bunch of equipment that was patched together. There's a bunch of 2D equipment, essentially, attempting to do 3D seismic data.
Oh, wow. Okay? Merging 2D to make 3D.
So you're gridding these 2D lines for the most part.
Well, it's just the equipment in the field. We set it up. We were actually collecting 3Ds, but it was hard. It was cumbersome. It was tough. By the time we got to about 2000, we'd actually designed enough acquisition equipment to actually collect a 3D. And so you went this kind of the first step change was about 2000 to 2010, and that's where most of this data gets collected in the old days. And so we developed a way of looking at the subsurface off of this real data set here. And then in 2010, one of those yellow plots I showed you a minute ago, Fairfield showed up, and we showed up in the Delaware Basin, and we shot something called DB1, Delaware Basin Phase 1.
Okay.
That was a step change. This step change from here to here really, if you go over here to this chart here, this is another way to measure what we're doing out here. If you look at traces per square mile, the first equipment was collecting about 56,000 traces per square mile. Well, we got some 3D seismic equipment out there. Dawson started running. We were up to about 240,000 traces. That was a 5-time factor. And then when we showed up to shoot all that yellow program that we call Delaware Basin Phase 1, we did the next step change. We went up to about 1.6 million traces. And so it's decent data.
What
it's good data.
The hell?
I mean, but just that magnitude shift, right? Like, if you take away 2019, that's
a big
insane.
That was the step change. Everybody followed suit out here. Everybody that was anybody was shooting this kind of density starting in about 2010, 2011. This year, this is what we're doing now. We're doing Sea Ranch, Mud City. It's another factor. This is a 10. We're collecting 16.8 million data points per square mile.
What the hell? Okay. 16.8 million data points per square mile.
Per square mile.
You can't see because the mic's in the way, but my jaw just kind of dropped a little bit.
Yeah. Let me go pick it up there.
Yeah.
So,
sheesh.
So most people would say, well, you're crazy. Does it cost 10 times more? The answer is no, it doesn't. I mean, technology advances. So just from a historical perspective, 3D seismic got rolling out here.
Yeah.
This was the place that land 3D seismic really took off worldwide, by the way.
Wow. Okay, so you caught us up.
Yeah. So anyway, a little history there, which is interesting. This is some of the the goodies that are sometimes a little bit left out of what does it mean? Well, we're going to collect 1,000-fold every 41.25 by 41.25 feet. Okay, so we're going to have 1,000 vertical data points to be able to do something with.
Every 40 feet by 40 feet.
Every 40 feet by 40 feet.
Wow.
Okay.
What the hell?
So,
it's like almost hard to believe.
So
wow.
And out of that, you say, well, that sounds like maybe overkill. Well, maybe not. If you talk to the engineers, they want it 20 by 20. Right?
I bet.
Okay.
I bet they do.
So when you go back and you look at the historical aspect, you say, well, we were missing some stuff. Okay, what didn't we collect in those 10 years of the yellow?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what we didn't collect is we didn't collect a lot of near traces. We also didn't collect some of the slightly farther near traces. So those are two missing sets of information that never got collected. Okay? And it had to do with money and cost and target and where you're going to go and things like that.
Sure.
There was, logistical reasons for why we didn't do what we didn't do.
Right.
Yeah.
So this survey, because it had a shallow objective and because it had a much bigger mandate, we wanted to see everything we could see, and so we did. We went out and designed this thing to collect some reasonable data out to about 500 feet of offset. And people say, well, I don't care about stuff like out there. Well, you should.
Yeah.
It's that near offset stuff that's going to lead to the rock properties. It's going to lead to Poisson's ratio. It's going to lead to all of the other stuff that you were just talking to the quantitative interpretation guy over at Exxon about.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the stuff he needs. That's the stuff that didn't get collected and doesn't get collected.
That's the data that needs to be put into these advanced rock physics models, right? Because we
Absolutely.
understand, especially in unconventionals, how big of a deal rock physics plays and geomechanic plays, right? We need to understand how that rock is breaking, and we need to understand the properties on why that rock is breaking in the way it does. But the issue is we're trying to leverage data that doesn't work. It's not there, right?
It has bits and pieces of the answer.
Right.
Yep.
That's what it
and
comes
we
down
run
to.
synthetics, and we start using the logs to help us fill in those gaps, and we start driving in these anomalies, mapping out those anomalies, and now we can do that on a 40 by 40 basis.
And ultimately, we'd like to get it down to a 40 by 40 by 40. I mean, literally a cube of space that the engineers and the guys planning and drilling these wells can feel comfortable.
Wow.
I can't even figure that out for several miles, laterally.
I can't even pretend to act like I understand how you possibly get all those events back on the right depth, the right time, the right... that just is blowing me away because I don't know much about it anyway of the processing side. But what I do know is that we are definitely seeing something that's never been done. And now we're going to talk about what exactly that means. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that what we're going to go into?
Let's talk a little bit about where it's going. So anyway, I threw up one of these here. Here's courtesy of Dawson's out there.
Hey, come on, jumper.
And this is a plot here that most people that see 3D seismic might know what it is, but I'll explain it a little bit. what you got to know is this is a designated 41 1/4 by 41 1/4 bin space. And what you see is it's basically sorted data points from the shortest, nearest offset to the farthest. And what you see in the center is black.
Yeah.
We have every offset, every azimuth we need in the center. If you look at the very near traces, this little bitty corner down in here, and every single one of these, we actually have data. That's different.
We're not generating that.
We're not like, wishing we had it. We're not doing that kind of stuff. And you'll see in the super far traces, you'll see some striping out here, but that's, 16, 18, 20,000 feet of offset. But that's still pretty reasonable information out there. But the big point is we're collecting nears, fars, and we have really solid everything in between. And all that's like, well, if you're just looking at a structural map like I was showing you earlier, that's probably not as important. But if you're looking for the rock physics and the phasing and the facies changes and things like that, it's real important. So
wow.
So I think Steve Jumper said something about this here. The move, as I see it, is we're no longer exploring for oil. We know where the oil's at. We know it exists in a gazillion different horizons.
Yeah.
and it's all like, how do we get it out?
Yeah.
Well, that's the key, right? We know there's oil there, but how do we get that oil out economically?
Economically. There's the key word. So as a geophysicist or a geologist, we used to explore for oil and gas. We need to rewrite our ticket on what we're doing, and it needs to be centered around the concept of exploitation. How do we help? How do we put together a team of people that can find and better exploit the resources?
Yeah.
Right.
So with that in mind, I pulled this. This is an old Fasken. Drill here, drill here, drill. That was structural seismic.
Mm-hmm.
You had a big blooming here. That's a gas cloud. That's a gas.
We had
whatever.
a little bump.
Yeah, and so we were driving the show. Go out, collect data, we put it together, and we plop it down on the manager's desk, and they say, "Okay, Billy Bob, let's go. Let's get this done now." Right?
Get that rig out there.
But guess what? If you move forward to here, okay, where's the oil?
Where are you going?
Well, it's everywhere. It's here. It's here. It's over here, but it's not here. It's not over here. How do you tell? How do you know where in this whole section that you want to go exploit the resources?
Right.
Yep.
And so what's happened is the details that we're after are just that. They're details. They're hard to see. You have to have an enormous amount more what we call pre-stack data to figure this stuff out. So from my perspective, this is a survey that's designed to get us to 40, 40, 40.
Yeah.
40 feet by 40 feet by 40 feet. That's where we're going. That's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get sampled information vertically and laterally and build a cube of the earth and figure out what's down there.
Yep.
What's a little bit different is as we talk about, this is real data. Okay, it's just between you and me, right, guys? Nobody else is here?
No one's gonna hear it. No, this is a secret that stays at this table.
So one of the top secrets in the processing world is we're pretty good at fixing stuff, right?
Yeah.
We can fix stuff, right? So we build all these really cool tools to take care of problems. In fact, the guys in the field, they'll say, don't worry about it. Processing will fix that.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
So
fixing it based on someone's interpretation of how it should look.
Yeah.
That's correct. Or if you didn't collect it, well, we can kind of extrapolate or extend it or interpolate it, or we'll do something.
Right.
So that was another criteria of this whole thing. Is we want to come up with real data. We want to base it on real data. We want to be able to then we'll play with our tools. We'll actually do some of the high-tech, interesting stuff like CSI and 5DI and some of the other really cool stuff. We'll test that.
Yeah.
But we'll be able to have the answer to see if it works. Okay, so that's a direction in itself is part of the goal. And if it does work, then maybe we can get to that 20-20-20.
Sure.
Maybe we can give those engineers that what they really want is that 20 foot type spacing. So from my perspective, it's all about exploitation. It's all about pre-stack information. And from and this is kind of what I've come up with. I've spent a lot of time talking to a lot of different clients, and it comes down to something called a seismic facies. And can we tie a seismic facies to a geologic facies? And if we can, if we can make those correlations, Can we then tie that to the reservoir mechanics?
Right.
Okay.
I think you just, in one bullet point, describe the unconventional workflow.
That's it. And it's different. And we've got to figure out a way to actually work together and find a way to make that happen.
Starting with that rock, moving into that geophysical space, and then moving into the reservoir mechanics space. But like you were saying, that's not possible with the old way of doing things. Well, it's not possible to do it effectively.
Right. I think we've been cutting our teeth on figuring it out. We got some great software. We got some great super intellectual people working on this problem. And in the marine world, you actually collect some fairly dense data. So they've actually proven a lot of this stuff up in the marine world on how to get to where we're going. But in the land world, we've been limited, and we've been unsuccessful at getting enough data points to do this stuff.
Well, not only that, I mean, in the Permian, as anyone who's ever worked the Permian knows, the big issues with the salts and anhydrites at the surface, it just adds so much extra complexity into it.
Strips out the data. The data's not even there. It's not even coming back.
Yeah, if you look at the in the Delaware Basin side, I gave a talk a year or so ago. I called it my subsalt play on shore, because basically the anhydrites and the salt and the reefing up shallow.
Yeah,
you've got this 20,000 feet per second rock at the surface, and then you immediately go below that into your shales and
limes.
Limes, and you cut it back to 13,000 feet per. So you have this massive inversion, which is like a subsalt play.
Yep.
Wow.
And guess what? We don't sample any of that stuff.
Basin.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we just need a lot more data. We need a lot more data in a lot more places. We need a lot more near trace stuff. We need more far trace stuff. So.
Wow. I mean, how fascinating. And coming from our side, our perspective, we're a little bit more on the geoscience side, not so much geophysics. We certainly appreciate it, and we use it without question. But, the end game is certainly not just collecting and providing the image to have the answers. You still have to have a very sharp geologic interpretation, and you need to still have really good engineers to understand how the connectivity of the fluids in the reservoir, how when that frac is initiated, that fluid is actually coming back to best develop this field, this area, this asset, whatever it is.
Absolutely,
This is going to drive a lot of answers, and it's going to be unbelievable, but it cannot take away the fact that we still, without question, have a lot more to do on our understanding of this fluid coming into the wellbore, why we're landing the way we are, why we're putting the fracs away the way that we are. And so and it's a perfect time for that, because that's where we're at. This window of time today is exactly that. We are looking for those answers. We're challenging the interpretations to find those answers. At the same time, we have people like you that are driving real data and a real product that says, here's what it is. Yep. This is the data. And now our interpretations are getting stronger, more support. You can now do a fracture network that for your thesis that actually you see. You're not making an interpretation. Geologic interpretation sound. Any structural geologists say, yes, your natural fractures are going that way. Mm-hmm. Now, can we see them? We want to see them.
Well, the answer to that question is yes and no, and maybe, and we don't know yet. Okay,
this is true. That's right.
Yes, no, maybe so. Who knows?
And so from that perspective, the other thing this survey does that a lot of people don't get is this is actually going to be a converted way of a multi-component survey.
Right.
And so, as someone who's worked in the 3-component and in the 9-component world for the last 25 years, it's been a hit or miss. You know, it's been very isolated. It's never caught on, okay? And for the first time in the last 4 or 5 years, I felt like maybe they've actually hit on something in these resource plays, these shale plays.
Yeah.
Because they care about the fracture orientation.
Right.
They care about open fractures, closed fractures. They care about the intensity of that kind of information. That's all real important. But guess what else they care about? Shear wave velocities.
Right.
Okay. Up until recently, nobody really cared that much about shear wave velocity. Well, why do they care about shear wave velocities?
Yeah.
Well, we got a measured P wave velocity out here. we're gonna go out and do a bunch of funky math to come up with some high angle information in the P wave world to get a calculated shear wave velocity.
We're gonna throw it into our hand wavy model to get a hand wavy result.
Yeah. You know, kind of the cheerleading model.
Look at the hand
wave.
Yeah, that was
absolutely. You know,
that was legit.
So, but what if we actually collected it? What if we actually collected that shear wave and you had a P wave, a compressional velocity, and a shear wave velocity? You can get a VPVS. Now you're after density. Now, if you start talking density to the people that I'm talking to, they're like telling me that's the holy grail. That's the piece of the puzzle they need more accuracy in.
Wow.
So if they get the density function, they can define more geologic facies, more elastic facies. So from that perspective, that's kind of the direction. So this is the hope. This is the big thing out there that we're hoping to get some converted wave.
Okay.
I do have this is cool. This is really cool. My good buddy Glenn Winters, who worked at Fasken Oil and Ranch for many years, retired. He and I did a whole bunch of projects out here, and we did an arm waving show years ago, and we did a dog and pony out there in the
hand waving tour.
Yeah. And we came up with this mini little 3D converted wave data volume at the time. But I love this. The next key to rejuvenating the basin. What does that mean? The basin was dead at this point in time. 2005.
Wow.
It was not an exciting place to be.
You guys were doing that in 2005.
Well, was it in the 90s when all the super majors condemned it? They just said, there's no oil left. We're out.
How crazy was that?
Yeah.
So
we have no idea what that felt like. Can't even imagine it.
No, I can't.
They were wrong.
They're wrong.
So anyway, this was kind of like a foreshadowing here of what's coming up. But we ended up on this little bitty project. You ended up with this kind of like anomaly that was kind of cool, and from that anomaly, we were able to actually see some of this higher amplitude versus lower amplitude information down at the Strawn, which is what you were looking at.
Yeah.
Guess what? The Wolf Camp wasn't even considered.
Yeah.
Wasn't even a target in 2005.
The Wolf Camp, I mean, from legends that we've talked to, has always been that formation. Oh, we got to mud up. We're going through the Wolf Camp again.
Yeah.
It overpressured zone that never delivers, you know?
Exactly. So when you go back and look at the stuff we did in 2005, we're chasing this little tiny amplitude change here. Well, look at the size of the amplitude change in the Wolf Camp
that
we captured back then. So when you start looking at that, and this here is truly old school. This is cut and paste. Remember, you had like a crayon and you had scissors and stuff.
You just opened up paint in one window.
The software did the exact same thing, and that was fascinating.
Yeah,
we can cut and paste in the software.
But it's really cool because we had this like standard seismic P wave section out here, and Glenn went out and cut and paste and tied the San Andreas up here, and he had a really solid tie down at the Strawn. Good registration.
Yeah.
And then of course the big thing, going through the Sprayberry and down through the Wolf Camp section. Well, these don't even look like they're even the same data set.
No.
Okay.
Right. What's up with that?
Well, shear waves give us different information. This here could be some of the Holy Grail stuff that we hope for. Okay.
How cool is it?
We don't know what all this stuff means, but we know it's legit.
Yeah.
So you've done a converted wave on the old data set, on the whole thing.
No, just a small postage stamp.
Well, it'd be cool to match that up.
There you go. Now you're talking about what I call the breathing of the reservoir, the opening and closing, the 4D aspect of what we could get to when we start producing.
Wow! And you're obviously gonna give a paper, the rejuvenation of the basin,
the rejuvenation the second time around,
the rejuvenation of the basin, and then in quotes, I was right.
Yeah, just 15 years late.
Okay.
So anyway, we're gonna collect a lot of data out here for sure, and it really comes down. We're gonna collect, I think it's 7 billion traces just for the ranch per component. So that's 21 billion samples of information. So hopefully we're gonna find something in all this. We're gonna be able to.
And 21 billion samples, I'd expect something to be found.
Yeah, exactly. We expect something here, but from my perspective, the industry is about these 4 buckets. I like to talk about buckets. I go in and talk to people, and they're trying to figure out from the land position how to plan their wells, right?
Yep.
And then you got a group of people that come in and they figure out, well, okay, I'm going to steer this thing and land it and do that stuff. And then the next crew comes in and completes it, okay? And they're probably different than that. And then they move on, and then these guys are left for years trying to produce it and make sense out of it and what have you. So these are the 4 buckets, but these are the 4 buckets that we need to find a way to integrate the geology and the geophysics to help each one of these teams of people be successful.
If we can de-risk every single one of those bullet points there, and let's just say we go from, well, what do you say spacing is right now in the Midland Basin?
Oh, I don't know. No. 660, 340, I don't know.
660 is too tight. Apparently they got a parent-child issue out there.
1280, whatever's next.
Whatever's next. And then also the cool thing about this is doing this shoot now, post-development, how have the geomechanics changed? Because when you have companies like Diamondback and SM, and they're doing these stacked tank plays, right? They're doing a Sprayberry, first, second Sprayberry, a first, second Bone Spray, or Wolf Camp, and then they're doing a Dean well. Throw that in there, because why not?
So
right? And then all of a sudden, how has the subsurface changed? How has that max horizontal stress changed, right? We run a couple of FMIs, we understand.
You captured that data. In the first one, in the original one, you captured.
We have a snapshot of what virgin territory before it got messed up.
Yeah.
Okay? Dude. And so now it's been it's been drilled, it's been fracked, it's been totally changed, and you're going to capture that.
Yeah. So that baseline's captured, and now
what?
So now think about that, because remember, I've got data sets out here that I can get at least a baseline on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
The older data sets. But we've got different development within the field. We've got areas that have been fairly heavily developed. We've got total areas that have never been developed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we should be able to go in there and see for these differences. And then if we can, pull up, say while we're shooting this thing, they're fracking a well out here. Maybe we can see the pressure change, over a short period
So here's
of time.
my question to Fairfield, off topic slightly.
Sure.
My question to Fairfield is, are you guys going to be allowed to give presentations on these topics, or only the folks that bought the thing get to understand what you see? Because you are going to start seeing and identifying all these crazy anomalies that actually probably make sense because of the changes that we've caused from doing it the first shoot to now.
Yeah.
The world needs to hear that. We need to see what that looks like and how that changed.
How are we truly changing the subsurface?
Dude, that has all to do with spacing issues and all that stuff.
Data samples at every level. And the answer to that is we're very optimistic or hopeful that that's the case. Because we have a unique client here. Fasken has generously donated their data. You worked on it with your thesis. This is a company that doesn't play by a lot of the same rules that other companies play by. They care about the whole community, the whole system. They're very open to a lot of these concepts. So we didn't even talk about it, but they're shooting 3 full-blown or 3 or 4 VSPs with this as well.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have a VSP up on the platform. We're gonna have a VSP coming down the slope.
Wow.
We're gonna have a VSP down in the basement. We're going to be able to do those Facies ties. We're going to have that direct registration.
Right.
We're going to have that information for the converted wave data.
Yeah.
We're going to have stuff that you normally would just never get.
And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not super familiar with VSP, but the idea behind it is that you're getting that seismic horizon absolutely tied to depth.
Pretty much, yes. You get you know exactly the depth that you're at.
Yeah.
And then you also get the registration. You get to what the wavelet and all that information is supposed to look like as it travels one direction and hits those geophones down the well. So when you go to the two-way time, which is surface seismic, sometimes there's some variability, and you don't know how to fix that variability or calculate or correct for it. VSPs help you tie that information down, so you get some accuracy at a few well locations.
Holy smokes.
They give you a lot of information, and people just don't shoot those. We've actually had a few clients over the years say, well, why don't you include that in your data licensing? We've actually talked a little bit about that. It's like, you get one client to give up an old well and go shoot it.
Yeah.
We can get information you just didn't have in the past. So
Wow. Okay. Really, really cool. So you guys are on depth. It's data that's never been captured before like this. This is the future.
It is, I think, and it's about a density of data. I think ultimately we'll quit talking about wiggles, and we'll quit talking about seismic migration and refraction statics, and instead we're going to deliver, your high TOC shale version versus your carbonate block versus your scholastic, calcareous mudstone, and you're going to have an overlay of what your fracture orientation is, and you're going to have, and it's going to be information that that everybody can sit in a room and figure out. Okay, I want to avoid all the blue stuff here because that's going to rip up my bits.
Yeah. Land in that shale, right, and then frack into the blue, right? Because we know that blue is probably going to be where the deliverables are, right? That's where that space is going to be, in which those carbonates, specifically those dolomite stringers that we see.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
You're arguing that that's where we're going to see porosity and permeability.
That's where
That's the storage.
That's where I would think the storage would be. Right? I don't go down the wellbore and check myself, but I have a hunch. I have
That's
a good
your
hunch.
Okay.
It's definitely
All
not
right.
the target to land in because it's going to kill the drill bits.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Kills the drill bits. We know that. I mean, this whole package of reservoir here is insane. I mean, this siliciclastic in light gray, and then a high TOC shale in a slightly darker gray, and then you have a calcareous mudstone, which means it fizzes, but there are no fossils. This is like micritic mud that's calcareous.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever that is, and then a carbonate that might actually have some fossils that we can see shit in.
Yeah.
And then there's definitely dolomite too, and I'm guessing that dolomite aspect is just being lumped in to both of those. Whatever the percent dolomite is in the carbonates, that's getting lumped. And now this is it. This is that image that everyone's looking at and saying, all right, where are you going to put your wellbore? How are you going to frack it? Where's the hydrocarbon coming from?
Pretty much. And what you see here on this particular, you'll see some zones that look kind of maybe not so clean, or you'll see some zones down here. And we used
just
to
continuity.
think,
Man.
Is that what we call that?
we used to say, well, that's just noise. We got to get rid of that noise. Well, guess what? We're now discovering that what we thought was noise is sometimes signal.
That's
rock.
real
data.
It's rock. And so one of the other tools that we like to use.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because that's something that I know we're firm believers in as far as like on the processing side is concerned.
Yeah.
You don't want to over-process it because how much of that real data are you now losing, right? What you misinterpreted as signal.
Absolutely. In fact, we're going backwards. We're doing less processing or less aggressive processing.
Yeah.
And we're whittling away at what we think is noise, and we do it very cautiously and very thoughtful about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we get to the finish line sometimes, and some of the traditional guys that got used to quote the auto picker of a horizon. Well, you're going to struggle to auto pick that horizon. Okay.
That ain't happening.
And you should.
It ain't happening.
And that's the thing.
That's the point. If you're struggling, you're probably in a good zone.
Yeah.
Okay. So
there's probably some good stuff happening there.
The anomalies you have found may be what you were looking for.
Exactly.
So
this is where we're going. This is where we're trying to head to.
Yeah.
do you have, and maybe we'll get there, do you have an image of what that looks like? That's based on the data that was shot. What was the original date of the Sea Ranch data?
The original.
It's
this is actually not Sea Ranch data, I must confess.
Okay.
This piece here is some stuff we did in the Delaware Basin.
Okay.
My colleague. But this is where we're going. This is what we're going to do to the Sea Ranch data. And by the way, it's going to be amazing.
Phase 1.2 for Delaware Basin.
What I'm really here's what I'm trying to get at, Bruce, with that image.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand what potentially it's going to look like when you do a Facies model with using the seismic data like it's being used here. What's actually going to be increased, in your opinion, between what was originally shot doing it this model and now what's going to happen a year from now or whenever it's to that point where you have that new final product? Are we going to see more layers? Are we going to see more detail between it switching from that calcareous mudstone to the carbonate along the horizons? Where is the data going to increase the most?
Well, and nobody knows the answer to that totally, but what we're really hoping for is if you go down here and you look at the classifications, we basically have, in this particular example, 3 or 4 classifications from the third Bone Spring up, and we have 3 classifications in the lower Wolfcamp section. Well, what if I could give you, say, 5 or 6.
Okay. Now
maybe
we're
I
talking.
can pull out the dolomite you talked about versus.
Now we're really starting to understand the story.
Got it.
Yeah, and then if you can, backtrack that and see how the deposition changed or how these debris flows. Debris flows are fascinating out here, especially in the Delaware.
Oh my God. P-Dog. MTDs? Are we talking MTDs? I mean, unbelievable features.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the debris flows, and we've got a really cool example. This particular data set where you put it into movie mode, and when you watch it in movie mode, you look at every slice of the earth, you can actually see this stuff, and you feel like you're watching the geology.
You can feel the sediment flowing.
Yes. You see these carbonate blocks, these big bad boys down here. They are fault controlled. They follow a very specific pattern. You can watch that thing weave and wind through the data.
Wow.
It's very, very cool stuff.
You don't have one of those movies on hand? I want to watch.
I could probably find one. I probably have one of those.
That'd be awesome.
Bring it into IMAX, dude. Let's throw it up on the big screen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but this is, we're hoping to get this detail on steroids. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm following.
And we're hoping to integrate this detail with a lot of other stuff. This doesn't even take into account any of the shear wave information.
Oh yeah.
This doesn't take into account any of the azimuthal information, which is another component of the fractures. And
could you potentially go from learning what's going to happen with this sea ranch shoot, with the shear waves and your azimuthal, all this stuff that's going to increase this resolution? Can we now go back with better algorithms and more powerful algorithms to older data sets that did not get captured this way? Can we do a better job at extrapolating after we're done with this next shoot? That's
part of it, yeah, because if we have the real data to begin with, we can tweak the algorithm to see what's fake and what's real, right? So that's going to have an impact on older data sets, because quite frankly, there's parts of the country we're not going to ever reshoot. The Marcellus play.
100%. 100%. You can reprocess, though.
But you can reprocess it, but you've got to know what you're doing. And so we're going to use the real data to figure out what's fake data and what's believable.
And
we're trying to do that.
That's what's worth its weight in gold. So I can understand why Fairfield might not exactly like to just start giving papers and presentations about everything that you guys are going to see and learn, because that's a competitive advantage as a processing company to work older data and work it into that new a potentially new higher resolution model. I guess that's where I'll go.
We'll always keep something back that makes us with an edge.
Sure.
But we got to get this stuff out into the industry, because quite frankly, we're all in the same boat. We've got to find a way to be relevant.
High tide.
And do it. So I think we'll be pretty generous on the papers.
That's awesome. I hope so.
So that's the goal and that's the plan. So
that would be.
We'll see how that pans out.
Sure.
I always like to tell this little story here. So I get to go out and see a lot of different clients, and water and H2S gas are a problem in the Permian, different areas. So I sat down with quote, I call it Company
Lee
X
County.
one time.
Recently.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hot topic, water disposal, all that kind of stuff. But we had a company in a particular area on one of our data sets, and they had serious water issues and they had serious H2S issues. And it was kind of interesting because they were doing, standard manufactured drilling and completions.
Yeah.
And just the problem was magnifying and getting worse and worse. And so this Company X, they replaced the engineering team. That was kind of weird. But what was interesting about it is the only guy they kept was the geophysicist. Now, they wouldn't have kept him, except he had one set of information in the seismic world that said good well, bad well. It was that simple. It was an on-off switch, okay? So Company Y comes along. Guess what? They got the same problem. Water, H2S gas.
Yeah.
These guys realize, okay, we got a faulted system here. We got some fractures. We got some stuff. We'll just seal that section of the, formation off. We'll start producing it. And that worked. That saved them some completion costs. However, they lost acreage across there when they sealed it off.
Wow.
Company Z comes along. Same problem, right? These guys actually looked at it a little bit more intensely, the geophysics of this, said, hey, we got a set of natural fractures here, non-fracture here. They didn't seal it off. They actually just didn't complete it, okay? Or they completed it slightly different.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't, as I like to say, tap into the ocean, and they didn't tap into the H2S gas. So they actually claim they're saving about $700,000 a well on completion costs.
Damn.
And they didn't condemn any of their acreage.
That's big.
Okay. That's the kind of stuff we've got to figure out how to do. This is just, one little example. We want to be able to do this with the rock properties, the seismic facies, the reservoir mechanics. We want to be able to integrate all this stuff and create volumes of information that are usable.
Right.
So I always like to kind of tell that story because I hear different stories over the years. But, from my perspective, this is really what we got to do. Is I think geomechanics are the link between talking to engineers and everybody else that we're down here. If we can talk geomechanics in a geologic facies and tie that to an elastic facies, I think we'll all do well.
Yeah, no, that's what we're all going towards that for sure. We're all integrating. We all got that.
We've got our mud city that wraps around the Sea Ranch, and it's just as dense. Okay, we changed the geometry up a little bit.
Where did that name come from, by the way?
Oh, I got to talk
How
to
did you
Morgan
get to
on that. It has a historic meaning.
Okay.
It has something to do with Midland.
Okay.
And I don't remember the story on that. But
Mud City.
I've talked to my colleague on that because she came up with that name, and I like it because I can spell it. I'm not a very good speller, so mud.
That's a pretty easy one to spell.
I got some issues there, but no, and it's really we're hoping to leverage that 10.8 times denser data to get to some sort of point that makes sense. So but no, I mean it's a factor that we're shooting right now. We got, I think it's 400,000 source locations, so we got 300,000 source locations collected, something like that.
Wow.
And then we're getting to roll into our Mud City survey, which is we flipped the geometry a little bit on that, but it's basically the same density that we're doing now. And from that perspective, that'll take us probably till sometime at the end of November.
End of November.
Yeah, so we started shooting in June.
Yeah.
And then we're going to shoot till probably the end of November. So we'll have some product out, probably second quarter next year.
I was going to say about 6 months processing something like that.
We'll start feeding it out at that point. We've got a huge laundry list of stuff that we want to go look at. And we got some other cool stuff. We did a real cool test, which we haven't even dived into yet. We went out and collected every 16 feet information. So I've got a 2D line that's 8.25 feet down a road for 3 miles. And so we actually sampled the Earth's noise, and we're going to be able to look at that information and leverage that kind of information to add to the 3D. So we did some science, too, up front. So there's some really cool back-end stuff. We don't know where it's all at. I mean, we got a lot of things all laid out there, but we haven't actually got to the what it's going to lead to or what it's not going to lead to. I mean, I think there's probably going to be a lot of like, oops, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah.
That's typically what I find. So.
The thing I'm honestly most excited about is the ability that these other operators are going to have is to exploit the benches that have already been proven, and now to have the data that they need in order to say, let's try that Barnett well, let's try that Woodford well, let's try that that Penn Shale well that we're seeing.
What's that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
The Moonlight, the Moonlight project. But oh my gosh, this is something that's going to be changing to the way that we look at the Permian Basin. Yeah. And I mean that's home. At the end of the day.
Well, when you go back. When you go back and look at the shale revolution in a generic, or the resource play, as I like to call it as well, I'll never forget, it's about 2005 or so, maybe a little bit after that, maybe it's 2010, and the Bakken play was like the first oil play, kind of one of the first oil plays that kind of fired up. And I remember a bunch of the government agencies came out and said, we said there's only 165 million barrels of oil recoverable, and they've already produced 500 million. So what did we do wrong? I mean, I just didn't know. I was like, how far off could they be?
Wow.
That seems to just be a trend in history, because wasn't it Jimmy Carter that said we were going to run out of oil in the
10
80s?
Years, 10 years we'll be out.
Like that.
But what was cool about that statement is they went out and did an assessment of the Bakken at the time, up in the Williston Basin. They came back and they said, well, technically recoverable today, we think there's about 4 billion barrels of oil.
Yeah.
And if you read the fine print, you quickly learn that that's only getting like 3 or 2% of these tight rock formation oil.
Wow, that's a recovery factor of 3.
That was the early stages of those. So if you then say, well, crap, if we could just get that to 6, that's 8 billion barrels.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Well, those of us that have been working the Permian at that point, we all knew that's nothing. When they figure out what's going on down in the Permian, it's going to make the Eagle Ford, it's going to make the Williston Basin. Those are all important places.
Yeah,
right.
But the level,
potential.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
that stacked potential.
Incredible number. What do you think the number is?
How much oil do you think we got?
How much oil do you think we got in the Permian Basin?
Well, some of the CEOs have come out and said it's close to 50 billion barrels.
50 billion barrels of oil. And that's with what kind of recovery factor you think? 5%?
I think it's going to be highly variable based on the formation. I think some of them are going to be in the 1 or 2, and some of them are going to be in the 10.
Wow. And you know what? It goes to the point that we always make on this show of increasing the recovery factors, man.
Yep.
We are firm believers, and we know that in our lifetime, we are going to see wells that crack into 25, 30, 45.
Absolutely.
We're going to break this thing open, and we're going to be so much more efficient, and we can get away with drilling. Who cares about parent-child relationships anymore?
Yeah.
Just optimize your best wellbore, your best reservoir. Get that recovery out. Let Mother Nature bring it to you. Understand your fractures. Understand your reservoir on that level. Drill less.
Yeah.
Produce more fluid.
Understand where we have those pore pressures, right, to deliver those hydrocarbon. Understand that, the completions designs as well, right? They need to improve as well. Right? What geochemically is happening, right? When we're putting these different acids and fluids into the reservoir, right? What's happening with the clays and how are different things precipitating out? Those are questions that we just don't know right now.
Right.
But like you're saying, with these different types of inversions, and now we're able to look at not only calcareous mudstones, carbonates, siliciclastics, and clay-rich shales. Now we can start breaking out more and more and more and truly understand, when we put this stage away, it sucked because, it turns out this was, a smectite-rich shale, right? All of a sudden, now we're getting swelling involved. So the possibilities here are honestly endless.
Unbelievable. So much work.
And we talked a little bit about what I call the planning, steering, and landing, and then also the completions.
Yeah.
The fourth piece of that, which is going to hit us really fast because these things have huge decline rates, is the production. Okay?
Yeah.
So there's already talk about, how do we go back in and either refract these? How can we measure the fluids? So wouldn't it be cool if we could actually set something up on the surface and we could literally listen to these reservoirs being produced, take snapshots over time? Because one thing that shows up in seismic pretty well is pressure changes. You guys are putting some serious pressure in the ground out here.
Yeah, we are.
You're putting some fluids.
To the moon.
Oh, my God. And so, down the road, I think that's going to become a key component more on a very localized aspect. They'll go out and say, all right, we've got the first, if we can increase what we've already drilled by 10%, that's real money.
That's right. Major. It moves the needle. It moves the needle.
Yeah.
Man, I'm really hooked on this, the fact that you shot the seismic before all the horizontal wells were drilled, before all that energy was put into the ground and then pulled back out. I'm just, my brain's turning on when you reshoot that. Is that going to maybe even open the doors for some EOR technology?
Absolutely.
And some EOR type thoughts of seeing these major features that seem to be connecting these wellbores, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a natural fracture swarm.
Especially because, the original way these designs were pumped, right, is we were just trying to pump as much as we can, get these huge bi-wing fractures, right? We want to get thousands upon thousands of feet into our reservoir, right?
Yeah.
That's what we were modeling, right? Can you now see that within the seismic data?
Go back, isolate perfs and stages in a horizontal that is communicated over maybe a couple of miles, and now try to flush something through that. Add in something into that little stage, and start communicating horizontal wells between this massive natural feature that we know is there with sound geology mixed with this unbelievable data set. Is that
real data?
Real data.
Real data.
Not fake data here. We're all real data.
Yeah.
Unbelievable real data. I mean, that to me, it's all about recovery factors increasing and EOR.
Yep.
Getting just way more out of our wells and longevity of the production. We got to increase that gap under the curve. These drastic decline curves do not work. It's not okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of you guys taking on this task.
We're fortunate. We're very, very fortunate. Fasken's been good to us, and
I just hope you guys the brightest future, the best of luck, and just get this thing done. Paying attention. Are you doing anything as far as hiring interns and getting help, getting technical help that's sound and solid to get you through this?
We're growing. We've actually hired some people this year.
Wow, fantastic.
We've gone through a lot of transformation, but there's probably room for that down the road as well. And it'll be projects like this that will have to prove up that have its worth.
Right.
Its value.
I think it's going to happen. I think you already said it's happening. There's already operators out there that are chasing new things that they know they can't see, and then all of a sudden they're going to see it, and they're going to get better. Their wells now are doing it with the data they have. Now they can go and optimize, and all of a sudden there's badass Barnett play totally breaking out because of what you guys were able to provide, and then everyone's going to go, well, they were the first ones to do it. Why would we go with somebody else and try to do the same thing that they just did?
Exactly.
I feel like Fairfield, you guys potentially could just absolutely skyrocket head above shoulders in the specific industry that you guys are good in. And if that company grows, we want to help with driving interns. We want to help people get information
it's all about the next generation getting this stuff done. Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah, it really is. I mean, there's plenty out there for all of us to do. And we've got to drive. We've got to get people thinking outside the box. We've got to get people involved. Right. And so, I think the intern approach is a great approach. Actually, we a couple of years ago we hired an intern and came over and lived in our office. We taught them how to process seismic data. They were working on their master's or PhD thesis at the time. And it's like that person when they got done after working with us for 6 months.
Yeah.
And they were like one of the, just one of the office mates, right? They were there on Monday morning for fantasy football results. They were there for donuts on Tuesday, whoever, won the thing or whatever. And so they just became like part of the family at the time. But when they went back into the academy, and they had knowledge on seismic processing and they could call BS on something that so-and-so had interpreted. Well, I don't believe that because of X, Y, or Z.
Exactly.
Gave them credibility. So I think it's a good area that all of us need to work on is bringing more people in and trying to get them up to speed because the processing world it's complicated. It's time consuming.
Right.
It's, but you link that with and Dawson's awesome at this, by the way. They bring people out all the time on the crews and work on that. We need to work more on that on the processing side. And
Skippo, you got anything for the end of this? There's a lot there.
There's a lot. There's a lot to chew on.
A lot to chew on, man. And we can't. I think that's it. I think we just can't thank you enough for the opportunity to share that story. We're thankful for that Bruce Karr is on this program. I hope that you guys really do take advantage or think about the future of and assume success. Assume success internally.
Totally agree.
Set up that stage for those interns. Provide them with the tools that's cutting-edge technology, cutting-edge data, and because you guys, I think, have an unbelievable future. And Fasken's going to prove it, and everybody else that's involved in this shoot is going to prove it with successful results.
I agree. Totally on board.
The world is watching, sir.
All right.
And we are
got a lot of eyes on this, yes.
We are excited. Thank you so much for sharing the mics.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
We out.